Hello and welcome to Mike Drops the Mic. I'm Mike Lyman. Today, I'm joined by Isaiah Shields. Isaiah graduated from BYU recently, and since then, he has decided to walk all across the country. He has made a plan to walk from Utah to Washington to Texas, all the way up to Maine. Isaiah, how you doing today?
Doing pretty well. Thanks for having me.
So you graduated, when did you graduate from BYU?
Back in 2019, so it's been a little bit now.
So after graduation, you had a job, correct?
That's right. I worked in the corporate finance world.
Okay, and then what made you decide to leave that job to pursue this dream of walking across the country and seeing all kinds of incredible sights?
I tried several jobs out of college. They were all in the corporate finance world, but I kept thinking maybe if I tweaked this or that variable, then it would start to feel really good. But I could just never get to that place. And then I can't recollect where it came from. The best I can recollect is sitting in a chair one day thinking it would be really cool to go on a walk that could be measured in the scale of months. And then I just couldn't shake the idea. And so after being at it for quite a while and trying to figure out what was best, I just decided at the end of my life, I didn't think I would regret having done this. And you got to do stuff like that while you're young. So I just called up my boss and told him that I was going to be leaving pretty soon, and then started getting ready. And by then I had talked about it to so many people that would have been pretty weird if I didn't do it. I was talking about it for so long that I had to do it or else people would start judging me.
So when you talk about talking and telling other people about this dream and this vision of walking all across the country, what did your family and friends say about that? Did they support you, or they were a little bit nervous at first, or what was it like when you told them?
Yeah, it depends on who. Some people have that sort of adventurous spirit as well, and so they think that's pretty impressive idea. But other people are much more practical, and they don't really see any, don't make any money doing anything like this, and you're putting your life on hold, so to speak. And so, people are worried about where you're going to sleep or if you're going to be safe and things like that. So some people were interested. Some people thought I was crazy. It was just kind of a mixture.
Sure. And so you left your home in Utah and you went up
That's
to
right.
Washington. And when did this start? Like what month? How far into it are we right now?
I left my house May 13th. So we're looking at like 8 months now, 8 or 9.
Okay. Sure. And can you talk to me the progress you've made since you left? Where do you know how many miles we're at? What states have we been
Yeah.
through?
So I've been here. I actually have I keep my track of my miles on a spreadsheet. So I have a satellite phone that tracks where I am all the time,
Oh,
just to
cool.
make sure I'm safe. And when I'm out of signal, it can be used to text with people or call with people.
Sure.
So every day I start that when I start walking and I stop it when I go to sleep. So I've walked 3,932 miles so far.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
Man.
seems kind of crazy. And
So,
to the rest of your question, if I started in Utah, went up through Idaho, Oregon, and then pretty much circled the entirety of Washington. So I was there for a long time because I entered from Portland and then I walked all the way up the coast to the Olympic Peninsula. And then I crossed over through Seattle and over the mountains through Snoqualmie Pass, all the way through Eastern Washington, back into Idaho, up in the northern part, then into Montana, down into Wyoming, into Colorado, into Kansas, through Oklahoma, and now I'm in
wow,
Texas.
holy cow. So
Yeah.
so you're tracking your mileage. How far do you try to, I'm sure weather, it depends on weather. I'm sure there's all kinds of variables that determines how far you walk in a day, but
Yep.
do you try to aim like how many miles do you try to aim for a day?
Mid 20s is like a pretty solid day. My record so far is 35, and I've hit that
Wow.
like 5 or 6 times. Usually, if I'm like trying to get a chocolate shake at the end of the night and I just haven't eaten anything like cooked in like 3 days or 4 days or a week, and I see there's a town, it'll be really motivating to get to that town so I can get something cooked. Or if I've coordinated with somebody, like because I post on Instagram and YouTube, occasionally people reach out and they're like, I have a friend, he's right along your route, and he'll let you stay in his house for a night if you're interested in staying somewhere not in a tent. And
Wow.
so if that's true, I'll try to get there. So sometimes that'll push me farther. But I like the fact that the majority of the time I don't have a destination in mind. And it allows you a lot of freedom because if you see something interesting, you can just stop and look at it. Or like about a week ago, I was in Oklahoma and trying to figure out where I was going to stay for the night because most of the time I just can't. So you look at like drainage ditches and culverts and stands of trees and stuff like that. And a guy pulled over and he asked me if I wanted to go to a basketball game. So the really tiny town, really tiny, everybody goes to like the community basketball games for the high school.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, if you want to, we can get something to eat. You can go to the basketball game. And because I didn't really have anywhere I had to be, I was able to just take him up on that and kind of see small town life and see how that community worked and sort of understand that little bit of Americana more personally.
Sure. And I'm sure that you have had so many different interactions with people passing by, complete strangers who you don't know, or maybe people have reached out to you on your YouTube channel or on Instagram to maybe fund you, supply, give you some supplies, some food, maybe a place to spend the night. What do you think you've learned about strangers? Do you have a different perspective of strangers since you started this journey?
Oh, yeah. I mean, initially, that was sort of one of the things I was interested in sort of communicating and broadcasting is that if you look at the statistics, the US is actually a very safe place in almost all places and for almost all people. But the news cycle sort of feeds, and that's how they get their money is by making great claims and backing up stuff with true stories. But they're really one in a million, maybe slightly less than that. But yeah, I mean, these people, as my grandma would say, don't know me from Adam, but they are so helpful to be helpful to give me stuff and to give me a warm place to stay. And no matter where I go, that's been the case. And it's true that the people are a little bit more friendly in small towns, but even in the big places where, people aren't quite so friendly on average, there's always really nice people there. So I found great kindness in every place I've passed through. And they have no reason to help me other than the fact that it gives you the warm fuzzies. And as humans, we like to be kind to each other. And that's
Sure.
generally true. It's pretty amazing.
So you mentioned about people giving meals and a place to spend the night and things like that. What are some other examples of ways that strangers have helped you out?
It's pretty diverse. I mean, so those are probably the most common. I'll pass by someone's house or somebody will reach out because they've been following the journey for a while and they've got a friend who's right on my route. But people will help financially. I never really broadcast the fact that I want money or anything like that, but they know that I've got to have expenses and I'm not really making a lot of money right now. So I had one guy, I stopped in Montana. I was walking through this big mountain pass and I saw a sign that said bears, like on exhibit. So they had 4 grizzly bears and you could just go in there and learn more about them. And when I was walking out, a guy saw my sign that I have on my cart that says walking across America, which mostly I put up so people would stop calling the police on me, thinking I was like homeless or needed help. And he thought it was really cool. And he looked me up on YouTube and then found my Venmo tag and he gave me $500
Wow.
for no other reason other than he thought it was great. And he saw some kid doing something he believed in. And so people have been incredibly generous. And here, especially over the last couple of days, people will pull over all the time to give me $5 for a hamburger or something. But of the like 7 or so people who have given me a little bit of money in the last couple of days, 4 of them included $100 bill, which was wild.
Wow. Yeah,
I
that's
know that
fantastic.
generosity is just crazy. I'm still not making money because that's not like crazy common,
Yeah.
but it does help, help me so I don't have to only eat peanut butter crackers.
And I'm sure it helps right now. You mentioned you're in Tennessee right now and the weather's 11
Texas.
degrees. Or Texas, I'm sorry, Texas.
Yeah.
So you're not in a tent right now, but more
No,
often or not, you do spend the night in tents that you keep your tent on your cart, correct?
that's right. So it's pretty small. It's a 4-man, so I can carry my cart into the tent with me, which helps for like weather and critters and stuff. But
So
I would
what
say
else is
probably
on your cart?
90% of the time I stay in the tent.
What else is in your cart? What else do you keep with you?
Um, Most of the stuff you'd expect. I've got water, clothes, a sleeping bag, a tent, and the food that I carry with me from town to town, which makes it pretty nice. So, because occasionally I'll run into a intertown gap that's over 100 miles, which is like 4-ish days.
Hmm.
And so you're able to carry quite a bit of calories with you. But I also have a solar panel. That's how I charge a big battery that keeps my phone and my laptop and my satellite phone and my cameras all powered up, stuff like that.
So you talked about the peanut butter crackers you're eating and things like that. Are you trying to eat a lot
All
of
the-
foods that are high in carbohydrates to give you energy? Are you focusing on diet, or are you just happy when someone gives you $5 and you can go get something at McDonald's or whatnot? What's your diet like when you're doing all this walking?
Yeah, I am. I think people are built kind of differently. Some people have to be really particular about what they eat. Mostly with all the walking I do, I just have to eat a lot,
Hmm.
and it doesn't really matter what it is. But yeah, when I shop at the grocery store, it's mostly carbohydrate dense things like carbs and bread and beef jerky and trail mix and stuff like that
Sure. I'm sure you're walking off so much of it. I mean, especially when you're talking about going 26 miles, 20, 25 miles a day. It's
every
incredible
day. Yeah.
every day. Has there
Yeah, I
been,
don't think people realize how strenuous that is. Just wake up and some days I do 30 miles back to back to back to back for like a week. That's pretty brutal. But yeah, I don't really have to worry about staying slim. That's for sure.
do you have days where you're just like, oh, I don't feel like walking today? Or I'm sure you have days where you're not in the mood to do it, but have you had situations where you've spent more time at a certain, maybe because you've seen something so cool, like when you're traveling, you see a site that's so breathtaking that you spend more time there? Have you had those kinds of situations, or are you always on the move?
Pretty rarely. The only place I think I've spent quite a while, and by quite a while I mean 3 days, was in Seattle. And even then, Seattle's just so huge. It's just a metropolitan area. But instead of doing like 25 miles a day, I decided to do like 10 miles a day so I could go a lot slower and sort of meander. Other than that, I pretty much just do a straight shot. The walk isn't really about seeing destinations and being a tourist or anything like that. It's about encountering what you'll see when you're not trying to find anything. So over the time that I've been walking, like I've walked through some of the biggest towns on the route so far, like Denver, Portland, Spokane, Seattle, the biggest towns. I've walked through most of them. But inevitably, the greatest memories I've formed have all been in really tiny towns that probably nobody's heard of, like Whitehall, Montana, or Joyce, Washington, or Vader, Washington, or Weiser, Idaho. These are all places, or Thermopolis, Wyoming. These are all places where I have really great memories of people I've met and things I've seen. And nobody plans vacations around Joyce, Washington, you know? So it's more about just stumbling upon really cool things and seeing really small town America. I've really enjoyed it.
So when you finish this, do you think there's a chance you might go and back and maybe not walk, but fly to a bigger city and then make a trip down to some of these smaller towns that you've been to because you've had such a great time at them?
Probably. I've told most of the people that I've walked into, because I don't have a ton of time to stay with them. When I was in Washington, it was like August. So I was pretty worried about getting as far south as I could before the bad weather rolled in. So I
Mhm.
really didn't have a ton of time to stay with even the coolest people. So I'd just be on my way again the next morning. But I told them I wanted to do a victory lap once I finished successfully and got to that lighthouse in Maine.
Yeah.
Then I'll take a vehicle and I'll retrace the route and have a little bit more time to
Oh,
spend
that's
with people.
cool. So
Yeah.
are you happy with your progress so far? Are you happy with how far you're walking and that you've made it down this far south? Are you like
Yeah.
map it
Uh,
out about where you wanted to be by a certain date? Are we on track?
yeah. Progress wasn't always the biggest motivator besides just not dying in a snowstorm or something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty content. Yeah. I'm not, in fact, I'll probably start going a little bit slower just because I'm really far behind on YouTube videos and I just want to be able to take it in more. It's a really delicate mental balance because when you're walking, it's so easy to get caught up in like, I want to get here and I want to get there. And for me, at least, with my maybe whatever type personality I have to try really hard to remember to stay present and to enjoy what I'm doing. And to like when that guy offered to go to a basketball game, I was pretty hesitant just because of how I'm built. Not because I was scared of him, but because I was like, oh, I could get another like 4 miles in today. And then
Yeah.
I had to remember that I've walked thousands of miles where I probably don't have very much memory of the particular stretches. But the things I have vivid memories of are things where I went off the beaten path. You know, when I was in Thermopolis, Wyoming, and a snowstorm rolled in, and someone messaged me on Instagram that had seen my cart. and let me stay in their basement for 2 days. And I just read books to their children
Huh.
every evening, and just played with their kids who were like 3, 6, and 1 years old.
Wow.
So yeah, I didn't make any progress for those 2 days, which was this weird thing on the back of my mind. But I had to remember that that's really not what it's about. It's much more about doing something while you're there rather than getting somewhere else.
And forming memories while you're at these locations.
Yeah, and just kind of developing as a person, and remembering to live more intentionally.
So we're talking about developing as a person. So I'm sure that you spend all this time walking and it's given you tons of time to reflect on your life and everything around you. Do you think that this experience has helped you develop as a person, made you more mature? And how so?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say it has. I mean, one of the biggest motivations that affected me and made me want to do this is I don't know if you've ever played like the eulogy exercise, where you try to think of your own eulogy, what people will say about you at your own funeral. And it sort of makes you calibrate what you're spending your time doing. You think about what are the things that really matter in life. And because of our fast-paced way of living these days and how much media is being pumped out, like every streaming service is trying to create their own digital content now. And so there's so much that you could spend your time doing. But you have to remember that it's so easy to get caught up in the thick of thin things. And if you want to live the life that sort of makes you feel like it matters after you've read a really good book or watched a really good movie, I recently finished the movie called Marshall, which documents the case of Thurgood Marshall, or Thurman Marshall, whatever his name is. But he was on the Supreme Court, and he fought for people who didn't really have good representation in the South back in like the 60s and 70s. And you just watch those kind of things and you go, man, that is a life worth living. Like, I wish I was a little bit more intentional about what I did. There's all kinds of things that I could be working on. And so having all this time to reflect and spending all this time doing something that's super uncomfortable, because walking this distance all the time and being in having people look at you all the time and never knowing where you're going to sleep, it's very uncomfortable. And so you have to constantly re-examine, why am I doing this? And so you're constantly thinking and going, oh yeah, these are the things I care about. These are the things I want to be working on. It gives you a lot more empathy for the people whose lives you've heard about or lifestyles you've heard about but never seen. There's something that's different between statistics and personal stories. I know the statistics of how many people are suffering in, sub-Saharan Africa, for example. But until you go there and see a person who doesn't have enough food to eat, it just doesn't impact you quite the same way. And so, part of the reason I wanted to do this was I wanted to become closer to the kind of person I thought would be the kind of person I wouldn't have regretted living like at the end of my life.
Sure. Do you think in the back of your mind, I know right now we're talking about essentially living life with no regrets, and this is an opportunity that you've taken advantage of to be well-rounded and see incredible things and step out of your comfort zone and be uncomfortable and be comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's
But
right.
in the back of your mind, do you think that this journey could inspire other people to step out of their own shell, out of their own comfort zone, and try something new, whether that's walking across the United States or not? But do you think your story could be an inspiration to others?
I really hope so. My YouTube channel is called You Do You. It isn't called Walking Across America or I Like to Walk or Isaiah Walks or something like that. So what I'm trying to promote, and I do think you have to have a message or something you believe in, or else it's just walking. So what I'm trying to promote is to live with a little less fear. If the worst that can happen when you're envisioning doing something is that you'll be a little embarrassed or you'll be a little unsuccessful, but the best that you can happen is profound change or somebody getting a lift or making a change in someone's life or making an impact, then you got to go for it. And so I had this idea for a while before I decided it wasn't unrealistic. It wasn't in somebody else's life. I think people think of these things that would be cool, like writing a book or going on this trip or whatever, as something that somebody else does, starting a company. And I think it's all much more possible than we all think it is. You just have to start, which sounds really cliche. But I have had a few people to reach out to me saying, like, you doing this one step at a time and walking thousands of miles, literally 3 feet at a time, your average footstep, has like made me feel like if that can happen, then I can try at least to do this. So my basic message is, if you've got something that you really feel is important and you really believe in, then at least give it an attempt. And maybe it won't be that works out, but maybe there'll be something that works out because you tried that, an opportunity you couldn't have foreseen that ends up being your thing. And then, I'm not trying to tell anybody that they're not living a meaningful life. And I think that is easy to accidentally misinterpret. But I think everybody has untapped potential. And I think everybody has dreams that they've been afraid to move on. And I think the message is relevant that
I think it's important. Yeah. And I think it's like we were talking about, it's important to do new things. Doesn't matter what phase of your life you're in, whether you're younger, older, middle-aged, it's important to try new things because that's what makes life worth living. Having new experiences, meeting new people, making yourself uncomfortable. It's great for you. It helps you grow as a person. And I think it helps impact other people around you. So I think this walk that you're doing will inspire many people, especially when you finish. And you've got your YouTube channel that we've kind of talked about a little bit that's tracking your progress throughout your walk. So is it like a vlog? What are you doing with your YouTube channel specifically?
Yeah, so there's nothing like crazy about it, but it's just I try to put an honest representation of what it's like to have been where I was. So the people I meet, the emotions I went through, the places I went through, the sights. And then occasionally there'll be like so usually it's just like a vlog, like shows what I saw, what I experienced that day, interesting things I saw, interesting people I met. But occasionally there'll be side episodes of like, how do I find somewhere to sleep, or what's in my cart, or why am I doing this, or days where you talked about earlier where like, are there ever really big struggles? And there are. Like, I almost called it off a couple times just because you get in a funk and you don't really see what the big deal about it is, or you have a string of bad things happen to you, or so it's different all the time, but that's kind of what's the YouTube channel is just about, like what it's like to be doing this.
Gotcha.
I try to paint that as best as I can, but it is a new skill set for me, so I'm always trying to get better at it.
Now, we talked a little bit at the beginning about how your family and friends now, I'm sure now they're very supportive of you and they want you to finish this goal that you have in mind. When was the last time you saw family, friends? Are they still in Utah, or are they planning on making any trips down to meet you at any locations? Or are we going to be away from family and friends for a while still?
There's been a couple. So when I originally started, I started walking west to a place in Washington called Cape Alava. And my younger brother drove out there right as I was approaching the Cape, and we walked out to it just at the end with his now wife, his fiance at the time. So they joined me for about a day. My mom and my sister joined me for about a day. I've had friends because my dad was in the military, so we moved a lot. So I've had friends that I knew in Boston join me for a minute there. And then twice I've had to return home for brief intervals. One was when my grandpa died. Oh. And then one was when a close friend died. And then the next month, my brother was getting married. So I returned home the day after Thanksgiving and attended my friend's funeral, who was killed by a drunk driver. And then the next month, my younger brother got married. And so I stayed home until he got married and then resumed after. So I do see people occasionally, but there are definitely long times where it feels like your former life is almost like a dream.
Sure.
Because of the months that you haven't been there and how jam-packed every day has felt since then.
So when you're resuming and you're coming back, are you flying back? You're not walking the whole way back, right? Or how
No, so when I left, I was in Kansas when I received word about my friend's passing. And
Right.
someone had stolen my wallet, including my identification, when I was in Washington.
Oh my
So I
God.
didn't have the ability to fly then. So I took a train and 3 buses. But when I was in Utah, I was able to renew my license. So I was able to fly back to where I had left my cart with a kind family in Kansas and resume right where I'd left off.
Wow. So I know we're talking about taking your time now because like you went to the basketball games and you want to enjoy every moment you have in this trip. But when approximately are we hoping to get to Maine? When would the end goal be?
Probably mid to late, midsummer to early fall 2022.
Okay. What are some
Yeah.
of the greatest challenges you anticipate as you're coming up the East Coast there?
That's really hard to say because the things that I thought were going to be challenging weren't so challenging. Like the physical endurance thing is tiring for sure, but it's not like that hard. It's just more, I don't really have anything else to do. So even when you're tired, you just keep walking.
Yeah.
The things that really are challenging are some of the environmental conditions. Like some days you have wind hitting you in the face for all day, like for like a week or two on end. That can be brutally difficult.
Hmm.
Or hills can be really tiring. Or some of the encounters you have with people can be actually be quite challenging. They're really good and they really help you grow, but like I can't tell you how many people have been like really worried about me, which
Yeah.
sounds great. But after a while, I've been doing this for months and thousands of miles, and they'll just keep going like, "Oh, I'm just so worried about you. What are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about this?" And so they actually take like that burden of worrying about me and they put it on my shoulders to like reassure them. And it doesn't sound like a big thing, but when it happens literally hundreds of times,
Yeah.
it almost becomes like a selfish thing for them to do a little bit, which
Yeah.
sounds hard. But it's a very real thing. I've had to reassure all these complete strangers that I'm capable of doing what I'm doing. And I've been at it for months and
Well,
they'll just keep going on and on and on about it. It's crazy.
well, I can tell. I mean, you've been doing it this long. You've made it this far. Obviously, you know what you're doing. But at this point, it seems like I'm sure it does get annoying, and I'm sure they don't mean for it to get
Oh,
annoying.
they mean
No
very
harm.
well. And
But it
yeah,
sounds to me like they're reassuring themselves
right.
and not you. They just want to make sure, okay, Isaiah's going to be okay. And but yeah, I think
Yeah, that's great. They text
you're,
me all the time. All these people I've met,
yeah.
uh, like people that I met in the first month will still text me periodically just to make sure I'm doing okay. And
Oh,
that is invaluable. Like it really is to know that people care, and that really helps you as a person. And a lot of them have gotten really good at it. They go, "Oh, I'm sure you're capable," but it's every time I meet a new person that is really worried about me, I have
mhm.
to spend honestly sometimes like half an hour to an hour, like assuring them, like,
Wow.
"Oh, that's very nice of you, but I'll be okay. No, no, don't worry. Nope, I'm good." So yeah, they actually take that burden of like feeling okay
Mhm.
and they are intending to make sure I'm okay, but it turns into me making sure I have to communicate to them and making them feel okay. So that's kind of funny.
Hmm.
Or cops used to pull me over all the time. It hasn't happened so much recently, but it happened a lot on the interstate. And sometimes, occasionally, 99.9% of them are fantastic, really helpful, just making sure you're okay, asking if you need water. But with how many I've run into, that means I've run into like a dozen guys who tried to tell me you really need to be walking on the other side of the road or you can't be walking here. And I've done my research really thoroughly. So you have to be really delicate about phrasing it like, I don't know how to tell you this, but I have to walk on this side of the road. It's the law.
Yeah.
And if I didn't, I'd probably be dead like 5 times right now because people on their phones, if I'm walking against traffic, I can see them not paying attention. And
Yeah.
so when they're on the shoulder and they're about to hit me, I'm successfully able to jump into the bushes. Had they been behind me, I wouldn't have been able to see them coming.
So
So you have to phrase that quite delicately because as
yeah.
a person with a little bit of power, sometimes it can be hard to be told you don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, so
So
that's occasionally.
when you're talking about the cops being called to check on you and see what's going on, what is your reaction usually like when you tell them, "Oh, I've gone this far and I'm walking the whole way across the country"? Are they surprised?
Yeah,
Sure, they're
so
surprised, but are they most
sure.
of the time are they do they appear to seem very proud or very supportive, or what's it like when you tell? Is it different when you talk to cops versus strangers?
It's pretty similar, except for I think there's a higher ratio of cops understanding like how cool it is because they are doing something quite challenging. Being a police officer is very challenging.
Hmm.
And so, as someone who has striven to do something meaningful with their lives, because that has to be the motivation when you're a law enforcement officer, they
Yeah,
understand more often than strangers or random lay of the layman. So usually, the ratio of people who think what I'm doing is cool will be much higher amongst law enforcement officers. But yeah, the most common question undoubtedly I get is, "Are you really walking across America?" And at first, like my first week, they'd be like, "Okay, where you started?" I'm like, "Provo," like 100 miles back. And so they're like, "Oh, how cute." But now that
yeah,
I've walked almost 4,000 miles, they're like, "Wow, that's really cool." And
yeah.
then they inevitably have a million questions, and you can have quite a bit of bonding. There's some of them that just think you're crazy, but most of them are really impressed.
Well, Isaiah, one of the last things I like to do for my interviews is what I call seven quick questions. So it's seven short answer questions, can be about things we talked about or not, just to get to know you a little bit better. Sound good?
Okay, sounds great.
All right. What is your favorite movie?
Ooh, probably the Lord of the Rings, Two Towers.
Okay.
There's a great scene where Sam has to reassure Frodo like what they're doing
Hmm.
is worth it. It's called Sam's speech, and it's probably my favorite quote of all time.
Gotcha. So when you're walking, how do you entertain yourself? You listen to a lot of music? Do you listen to podcasts? Do you listen to anything, or what do you do?
Yeah, mostly books. So
Audio.
I listen to audiobooks
Yeah.
through an app called Overdrive, which connects to the public library system. So I ask most people I meet if they have book recommendations for me. So I have a huge list, and I'll just reserve them on the app, and then when they come through, I'll listen to them. So that's what I spend probably 90% of the time listening to.
Gotcha. What shoes do you wear when you're spending all this time walking? And has that, I'm sure, they haven't sponsored you yet, right? We got to get
Now
Nike
we got to put
Adidas
some
here to
pressure on them.
sponsor you.
Yeah, so at first I was going to try different ones every
Yeah.
time. So I tried quite a few, but I've settled on what is, in my opinion, an outlier in terms of quality and durability and comfort. And so they're a brand called Hoka, and they're the Bondi Sevens. And so that now they're my ride or die for sure.
Gotcha.
So if you can put some pressure on Hoka, I'll appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah. We'll see what we can do, huh?
Appreciate it.
So, growing up and now, who do you view as your mentors and role models?
I mean, I think the most obvious and cliche answer, but is true, is probably your parents.
Hmm.
It's funny, you're young and you think your parents don't know what they're talking about, and then you grow up and you realize you're exactly like them in some instances. So, I mean, my mom and my dad have got to be the biggest ones. And then that fella that I mentioned from Boston, his name's Gary. He came out and walked with me for a while, and he was one of my um, leaders in the scouting organization when I was growing up. And so we've stayed in touch, and I'll go and visit him sometimes, and he'll come out and visit me. And he's just been a real good source of inspiration. So that's probably the biggest one besides from my parents.
Gotcha. What have been some of the most breathtaking sights that you've seen in your journey thus far?
Um, there's quite a few. Top of my head, there's a place in Wyoming called the Wind River Canyon. I had no idea. I saw that there was a canyon coming up, and I thought it was going to be just. But yeah, it snowed the day before, but that day was sunny and it was breathtaking.
Hmm.
The Olympic Peninsula in Washington is out of this world. It's a rainforest, which I didn't know we had here in the continental United States.
Huh.
But there's a rainforest called the Hoh Rainforest, H-O-H.
Mhm.
And that was just crazy. Butte, Montana was like something out of a book. All these old mining facilities and all these old brick buildings that are mostly empty. So that
Mhm.
was crazy. Whidbey Island off the coast of Seattle, unbelievable. The Columbia River Gorge in Oregon, really, really worth your time. Scenic Route 30. Yeah, they're really cool. Cape of Lava was amazing. The Strait of Juan de Fuca up above the Olympic Peninsula, really good. And then the plains of Wyoming were just crazy. So yeah, there's a lot of different categories, but I feel really blessed to have done these things.
Sure.
Some of these places you walk, like in between Lovell, Wyoming and Grable, Wyoming, there are these two valleys, but in between is a 27-mile gap of just nothing, just not a single thing. And so I was out there and it was getting late, but it was so still. Like there was no wind. A car passed me maybe every 5 to 10 minutes. So it was just me, and I walked until like 3 a.m. It was just pitch black, not a sound. I could hear the sound of my tires rubbing against the pavement, which is pretty unusual. And there's just no lights. Yeah, that's worth doing if anybody has the chance. Just try walking that on a warm night. It was unbelievable.
Got all kinds of good suggestions and places to check out there. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So different places in the United States are known for having different styles of food. Have there been any, when strangers offer to buy you a meal or give you money for food, have there been some memorable experiences eating new foods you haven't tried before?
I don't know if it's so much a place thing, because I have largely been in the middle and western United States so far, which is,
Yeah.
in the terms of the world, relatively small.
Right.
But
Yeah.
different people I'll meet will have different opinions. Like you'll run into people who are pure vegan, and they'll have really interesting ideas about what a pizza should look like, in my opinion, or what a pizza should taste like. But I did live in the Philippines for 2 years, and they've got some interesting food.
Sure.
Like they'll take a duck egg and they'll let it grow for 19 days, and then they'll like ferment it, and that's what you eat. Or they have this really nasty vegetable called ampalaya, which is really gross. It's really bitter. Or they'll have blood soup, which is made out of pig's blood, things like that. So I've tried my share of
exotic and interesting food.
Yeah, and it's just not for me. I have a strong sense of exploration, but not when it comes to eating things. I like French fries and pizza.
Can't go wrong with those, huh?
Really hard to.
My last question for you is, when you do make it to Maine and then you do come back home, how will you celebrate? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm debating between inviting people to Maine so they can walk with me for that last couple 100 yards or something.
Oh, that would be cool. Imagine if you get the people you met along the way, see if some of them could be there. That would be cool.
Yeah, so I'll probably publicize it when I get close, and I'm leaning towards that. Letting everybody come who wants to. Obviously, it's a long ways away, so not everybody's going to be able to make it. But my whole life, I've been really understated. So for a long time, I pictured just walking up to that lighthouse, putting my hand on it, and then just walking away and being done, and not telling anybody what I had just done. Although I guess if they saw my cart, maybe they would know.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to be better at involving other people and not being doing it for the fact of just being cool. Sure. So I'll probably invite anybody who's interested to come to Maine. And
I'm sure you'll have some family and friends that love to walk the last couple miles with you. I'm sure that'd be so
probably a couple.
Yeah. So when you get to Maine, you're not walking back, right? From Maine?
I doubt it, but who knows?
Okay. Might not be done walking then, huh? Might want to.
Maybe. I have a really cool I have another idea that's just I'm struggling to let go, sort of like this idea was, to walk from the Dead Sea to the summit of Mount Everest, which is the lowest point in the planet to the highest.
To the highest. Yeah, sure.
I think that would be cool. So that might be something I do in the near future.
I've talked to a few different people who have climbed Everest. This one guy, Brian Dickinson, who I had on my podcast, absolutely incredible story about his summit attempt at Mount Everest. I mean, if you could do that, that's another great bucket list item to cross off.
Yeah, and if you were to walk from the Dead Sea, which is in Israel, to Mount Everest, I mean, that's another 5,000-mile plus journey, depending on which route you take. So that would be, and it'd be through really exotic cultures to me.
Yeah, that would be very
cool. The US, and there's definitely subcultures in every area I've been to, but it's all English, and I understand it for the most part. So that'd be a really eye-opening experience, I think.
So you said you couldn't get this idea out of your head. Can you, I mean, you're already starting to think about this Dead Sea to Mount Everest expedition. What is the
Yeah.
likelihood that you think this happens?
Probability that it happens, it still sounds like a challenge, but like I said, when I first thought of the walk across America idea, it sounded really outlandish because I was a fairly normal bloke,
Yeah.
to use an English term for no apparent reason. But I just couldn't get it out of there. And I've had this walk from Dead Sea to Everest idea for like the last 4 months or so. And it's been pretty strong too.
Wow. So you would probably want to take a little bit of time off though after this walk before you try to do that.
Maybe. I think on that one I would have to do quite a bit more prep. And obviously if I actually made it to Everest, I would need some sort of backer. It's quite expensive to have the proper gear to do Everest.
It is. I was looking
So
at
it's quite a bit more involved than just walking out my side door, which is literally what I did to start this journey. Just left from my driveway. But I like the idea of the challenge.
Well, Everest can be at tens of thousands of dollars doing that. I mean, I was looking at
exactly.
Insane. Yeah, I'm sure you could get some fundraising going, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe I'll have if I've got my whole YouTube channel documenting this journey, I'll have the chops to show them that I'm pretty serious about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some outdoor company would probably like, or I'm hoping would like to put their brand on me.
Yeah. So we talked about your YouTube channel, so people can follow you there. People can follow you on Instagram. Are those the best two places where people can stay up to date with what's going on your life and your journey?
Yeah, for sure. So my Instagram will translate all the content over onto Facebook if there are people that don't do Instagram but have a Facebook account. So my Facebook is Isaiah Glenn Shields, and you can probably put all this down in the description.
Yeah.
And then my Instagram is IG Shields 27.
Perfect. And your YouTube channel one more time?
It's called You Do You. So it's spelled out like the expression, like when people are saying something that they want to do that you don't really believe in, but you say, go for it. You do you.
All right.
You do your thing.
Beautiful. Isaiah, anything else you want to add here at the end, or are we just about done?
No, I appreciate you having me on the show. And I guess my last line for people is try to live a life that's a little less controlled by fear. And if you have a big idea, you can at least try it.
Well said. That was a great closing remark. Thank you, Isaiah, very much. I appreciate it. Good luck on the rest of your voyage. I'll be staying up to date. Everybody else can on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And I appreciate you talking with me today.
Thanks for having me on.